Hi everyone, I'm Hannah.
I'm Riley.
I'm Madeline.
And today we're going to be talking about the Hunger Games. Specifically,
we're talking today about the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which is the prequel to the series that just came out this past year.
Yes, we're going to be comparing the book to the movie.
Should we start off by saying which one we preferred?
I personally really like the book more, but we can get into that a little later about why I think so.
Personally, I saw the movie in the theater and I really enjoyed it. I thought they did a great job with it. It was really entertaining.
Yeah, I agree. But I think overall I did prefer the book more.
Yeah. Okay, so the prequel is set as the 10th annual Hunger Games, so like 60 years prior to Katniss's story in the original book. And it follows Coriolanus Snow, who is obviously the president in Katniss's series, when he is an academy student in the capital. And they open up for the 10th annual Hunger Games with having academy seniors each get a tribute in the games and mentor them and try and get them through the games to win this big award called the Plinth Prize to be able to go to college and have a bunch of scholarship opportunities and everything. So it follows him through that as he gets a tribute from District 12, Lucy Gray Baird. And it follows their complicated dynamic from Capital student and District 12 survivor and everything. And it's a really interesting new perspective into Snow's backstory and how he became who he is in Katniss's book 60 years later. So I really like the book personally. Well, first of all, I just think Suzanne Collins is an amazing writer. I like the entire series, but I really liked this book because it gives us such in-depth analysis kind of behind the character of Snow and his, I guess, like the roots of what he does in Katniss's time, like back when he was a teenager. And we get to see his struggles and a new side of this villain character and sometimes kind of root for this villain character. But it really helps understand like the character in and of itself and the capital in and of itself and the games just so much more with this depth and different perspective. And I just thought because the book is from Coriolanus's point of view, I thought we got so much new information because it's from inside his head and we get his internal monologue that I think the movie couldn't necessarily portray.
One thing that really stood out to me for the book that the movie didn't really have as much was it did a lot more developing of their relationship between Coriolanus and Lucy Gray. And I think obviously the movie had to be in a 2-hour-ish time span, otherwise people would, well, some people would leave or whatever. But I feel like they don't really go in as depth as to why he was so like obsessed with her. And so when he goes crazy, it's a little bit abrupt still. Whereas the book really just develops the relationship.
Yeah, I liked part of this thing like with the movie is like Lucy Gray Baird is like a singer and that's like her thing. She's a performer. So I thought it was really interesting like how the producers of the movie were able to like portray her as a performer in the movie and we like got to see her sing and stuff. And Rachel Zegler was like perfect for that role. So I think she killed it.
I do agree. In the book when you're reading her songs, it's like okay.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of skip it. Like, I just move on to the next part.
Right.
And in the movie, it really helps her singing, like, helps develop the plot and bring the book to life in a way that I could have never imagined.
Yeah. Her, like, style of singing, I feel like, is really integral to the plot because it's different and she's, like, singing about relevant things. So when you're able to see that and how she performs and the way that she does it, it, like, really helps.
Yeah, I think especially that last scene where she's like singing with the snakes all around her. I think that just was super powerful in a way that the book wasn't able to quite portray as well.
Going back to your point earlier, I do feel like a lot of Snow's inside thoughts about him and Lucy Gray's relationship couldn't make it to the screens, which did make the ending like very like, whoa, what's going on? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But from like the point of view of someone who's read the book before while watching the movie. It made sense to me, but it did come kind of quick, and you didn't really see his manipulative and malicious thought process behind every single move he made with Lucy Gray. There was the romantic side of him a little bit, but a lot of it was methodical and manipulative, with every next step that he had for himself planned out, and like he had a reason for everything he did. And break or whatever at the end of it, I liked it way more in the book. I thought Suzanne Collins made it so much more detailed, and so much his just like craziness came out more in the book.
My experience with the book, like I read it a while ago, and I feel like I didn't read it super in depth. So when I watched the movie, I was confused at the ending until I thought back, and I was like, oh, like I guess it makes sense. Like when I think back to the book. But for people that haven't read the book, it was so abrupt, like her leaving and everything, and like it kind of makes sense that you would need to read the book before watching the movie.
Yeah, and I'm normally such a stickler to, like, I have to read the book first, but in this case I didn't read the book first, so it was definitely a little bit weird. And I think one of the things that I forget, because I haven't seen The Hunger Games in a while, is just, like, how disturbing the movies are. So I'm, like, sitting there watching, and I'm like, okay, I don't really want to be looking right now. But then it's just, like, she does such a good job developing the plot and stuff that it keeps you there.
Yeah. But the books are even more disturbing almost. They had to cut a lot of things from the book that they weren't necessarily essential to, like, the plot, but just, I feel like a lot of things were just, like, the movie was overall abrupt. I think it was upwards of 3 hours long, but so much got cut out and missed. I kind of wish they would have done, like, a Mockingjay type thing and split it into two.
Yeah.
Like, the Hunger Games part with Coriolanus and Lucy Gray, and then what happened after with him as a peacekeeper. I felt like that would have been more productive to getting the plot across and getting the overall story of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes across, because there was so much violence left out with other tributes' death, and like these tributes are still coping from the war, as we saw with Coriolanus himself was coping with the war that happened only 10 years prior. So the brutality and the humanity of it, I feel like a lot of things were left out, which was just fairly unfortunate. And even Coriolanus' classmate who reached into the snakes to gather the school report, she had a much more violent and just like experience in the book with the aftermath of her being bitten, and that just had to be cut, and it just, her personality change like made sense but also didn't, and I really wish that we could have had a bit more from the book.
Yeah. One other character that isn't necessarily like a main character that I thought was interesting was the professor who has like the morphine addiction. I forget his name, but I think the book like did a really good job like going into detail about the torture that he like lived through in his own mind because he created the Hunger Games, and although it wasn't intentional, like he has to live with that every single day.
Another just like minor detail that I wish could have been in there was the Dr. Gall's laboratory was described as having all these like future Hunger Game like animals type stuff in her lab, with like these dogs in cages and like humans who had been deformed to like in her experiments, like testing like green limbs and claws and mouths where they shouldn't be, and all this like really wacky and kind of disturbing stuff as written in the book. But I wish we could have seen what they could have done with like CGI and stuff in the movie to kind of represent that, because all we saw were these colorful snakes, which granted did kill some kids in the Hunger Games. Like obviously they're violent, but like to see the path laid out on the screens at least of where the Hunger Games were going and how far deep they were going to go to eventually end up in Katniss's Hunger Games with the Mutts and the Tracker Jackers and stuff. I wish we could have seen like her Dr. Gall's like kind of insanity with it and these science experiments and the dehumanization of the districts and the people who messed with the Capitol.
I also feel like there was, so like this movie is the prequel, and like I've been seeing a lot of theories of like Katniss in the later books. Like Snow hates Katniss so much because she reminds him of Lucy Gray, and he knows what he did to Lucy Gray. And I feel like you need to read the book to understand that.
Yeah.
Because it's not really shown in the movie. So, like, if you were to only watch the movies, you'd be like, there's really no connection. It's just, like, the same character. But there's, like, rooted, like, hatred for Katniss. And that's why she's treated the way she is in those movies, was because of the mistakes that Snow made in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. So.
Yeah. I think it would be interesting to get some kind of story about the time, like, after this and before Katniss, because, like, everything about the games really transformed from then.
Yeah. And it was, like, in the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, they were having so many issues with, like, the technology, where the water would, like, come sailing through and it would break and hurt them all. And then they really refined it to the point where, like, they're, like, shooting fireballs at Katniss and stuff. So I think that would be really interesting. And, like, the stuff in the lab with the mutts got so, like, refined.
Overall, I think both the depictions of the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes really added a lot to the series and really helped me personally understand the characters in this series that Suzanne Collins created. It really gave more, like, love to this series that I've had for forever, because I read the first books in, like, 5th grade. So it really gave me more appreciation for the Hunger Games series, and I really liked it. I have no complaints about either of them, either the book or the movie.
I agree.
Yeah, I feel like both of them combined added an element that one couldn't do alone, and so I think that's why it's so great that there's movie versions.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.